talk a lot about, I hate to use the word, but I will use it, cures. You can't use the word cure on the radio. We have to leave that to other physicians or stuff like that. Okay, you can't talk about treatments. We basically provide the information for your entertainment, and informational use only. It's up to you to decide what you want to do with the information. Well, we all know that the biggest business in this country, aside from the medical industrial complex, and bigger than oil, is the pharmaceutical company. Okay? Now, there you go. Every condition requires a prescription. There you go. Now, be honest now, how many of you folks out there are on some sort of medication for one reason or other, either blood pressure or something? You know what I'm talking about. A lot of you are not. That's a good thing. But most of the American people are on some sort of medication. So there is no, incentive for the pharmaceutical companies to get you off this medication. So when it comes to a cure, now, okay, a disease like cancer. How long have we had the American Cancer Society? American Cancer Society. We're looking for the ways to be able to help you. We look for all kinds of new treatments they look for. They don't want to find a cure. I mean, think about it. You got a stove at home in your kitchen. How many burners are on it? 4. Most people have 4 burners on the stove. Okay? Let's just think for a second. How many millions or billions or maybe trillions of dollars every year go through the hands of all these different foundations for research? American Cancer Society, Leukemia Foundation, all these foundations. How many millions or billions of dollars go through their hands every year? Don't answer. Let's just take that amount of money and put it in a pot and stick it on a burner. Turn it on. Let's let that cook for a little bit. Now, how many millions or billions or trillions of dollars go through the hands of all the medical personnel, doctors, okay, x-ray technicians, therapists, all that stuff? I mean, that's a lot of money, a lot of doctors. Let's take that money, put that in a pot, and put it on this burner. So now we got 2 burners going. How many millions, billions, trillions, or gazillions of dollars go through the hands of the pharmaceutical companies for all of the drugs for treating cancer? Now, we're only talking cancer right now. Let's take all that money, put it on this burner. Now we got 3 burners going. Finally, how many millions or billions or trillions of dollars go through the hands of all the people involved in the hardware, building hospitals, manufacturing hospital beds, bedpans, chemotherapy machines, syringes, all that stuff? Now we got 4 burners with a whole gob of money. Snot loads of money on the stove. And all of a sudden, some thick Coke glasses, Wally Cox type, in the back of a research facility in Podunk, Arkansas, that's been looking into cancer, all of a sudden looks in his petri dish and he goes, "Eureka! I found it. The cure for cancer." All of a sudden, all these people with all this money on the thing go, "What did you say?" Do you think this little guy is going to make it home in one piece in one night? Common sense, folks. Doctors, hospitals, pharmaceutical companies, and everybody that manufactures anything from a chemotherapy machine to a bedpan all make money from you being sick. Question: how do you guarantee profitability and job security? Answer: guarantee that you get sick. That's it. Cradle to grave. That's what they said. They have no incentive to make you well. It's up to you to educate yourself. Ask specific questions and learn as much as you possibly can. And that's why we're going to bring this next speaker up here. He's from Life Research. And Ron has been is at this for a while. Are you all set to come on up here?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, ladies and gentlemen, give a round of applause because this gentleman is going to give you some information that just might help you in your search for good health.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you.
What a blessing to be able to be here today. I'm so grateful that Pastor Butch was touched in his heart and inspired to ask me to come. I've come all the way from Utah, and if I were to go home right now, it would have been worth the trip. But it's going to get even better because the rest of the day is still coming. I feel love coming from you people. Some of you I've met yesterday, and some I've never met. Some I've met by telephone as you've called and talked to me. I've been blessed to be on the Pastor Butch Show for several months, not quite a year, but quite a few months. And it's been a great blessing in my life to be able to share special things given by God over the air. I want to just briefly mention 3 herbal materials that have been given by God against the plagues of the last days. And I say right now that these things are not to be used to treat, to cure, or to diagnose any illness. That's what medical doctors do. I'm Dr. Ron Greene. I am not a medical doctor. I'm a scientist. But I also have a degree as a naturopath. But again, I don't practice as a naturopath. I'm a scientist. I study the herbs and pray. And I'm guided by the Holy Spirit, praise the Lord, to the things that I'm going to share with you. First of all, the first gift that we were given is a bacteria buster. It's an herbal extract. And again, these things are gifts from God. They're herbs that were created by God, and they're intended for the use of people who believe in God and know that by faith in God and the use of His creations, they can be healed. Bacteria buster, herbal extract. And I'm not going to make any claims. I will just tell you the reports that we have had back, sometimes in hard copy, sometimes reports from hospitals, sometimes reports from laboratories, medical laboratories. Most often just reports from people who have used the herbs and have experienced some results. And I'm going to just read these off to you quickly. My time is short. I want to get a lot of information to you quickly. Bacteria buster, positive responses, users report great results in use against skin infections. And I just might mention this is how I got to meet Pastor Butch in the first place. There was a fellow in Virginia who had a staph infection on his leg. The medical doctors had used every antibiotic they could to try to kill that staph infection. And by the way, bacteria mutate in as few as 2 generations, and that could be less than an hour, and you can end up with 2 generations later, for example, a bacteria that is resistant to all of the antibiotics that killed the parent strain just 30 to 60 minutes before. They're very adaptive, and it's very tough to keep on top and ahead of bacteria and their adaptability. But this fellow ordered the bacteria buster from my website years ago when I had a website, and it took care of that staph infection on his leg in 3 days. Topical application. Under the high-powered microscope, we've observed that the bacteria buster kills every bacteria we've tested against on contact. By the time I put the cover slip back on the slide and refocus the microscope, the bacteria are already dead. This includes staph, strep, E. coli, salmonella, proteus, citrobacter, Pseudomonas aeruginosa, Klebsiella pneumonia. You could just go on and on. Everything we've looked at. In fact, we had a fellow come back from Desert Storm 1. He was in Special Forces. He blew up a lot of Saddam's bunkers. He also had the anthrax shot. And while he was out in Iraq, he started getting these sores on his body. The medical doctors diagnosed him with cutaneous anthrax. They sent him stateside to a clinic in Texas. He was treated for several weeks with multiple antibiotics. Finally, the sores went away, and he was discharged from the service. But several months later, the sores started coming back. And when he came to me and said, "Ron, have you discovered anything that might help with this?" I said, gosh, I don't know, Jerry. Maybe I have. That was kind of a fib because I was quite sure, really, that I had something that could help him. But he had sores basically from his neck to his wrists to his ankles. And they were so thick they were contiguous, running into each other. And I said, you put this bacteria buster on those sores with a clean finger at least once a day, and then you tell me if it does any good. Long story short, 3 weeks later, all of the sores were healed and gone. There was not one left. I called him 3 years later when the powders were flying around in the mail and said, by the way, Jerry, did that anthrax ever come back? And he said, no, this is the first time it's never come back. And so I was very grateful that this man who has risked his life doing what he did in behalf of our country was able to be helped, even though traditional medicine wasn't able to take care of the problem permanently. Okay, skin infections, acne, ear infections. I have a medical doctor that buys the bacteria buster from me, and he has me label it special for him, bacteria buster eardrops, because he tells me it's the most effective thing that he ever can use against ear infection. And he's an ear, nose, and throat specialist. Interesting. Stinging nettle, insect bites, infected diabetic sores. Come back to the table and I'll show you an infected diabetic sore where the woman's life was saved. She had vancomycin-resistant enterococci, that's called VRE, which is a step beyond methicillin-resistant staph, which is still killable with vancomycin. But she did not respond to the vancomycin, so they planned to cut off her leg. She went to a medical doctor that had our bacteria buster. He put her back in the hospital, gave the nurses to treat with a bacteria buster, and her life and her leg were saved. Skin rashes, vaginal candida infections, and more. But let's go on to Herbal Mender. Herbal Mender we've had positive response on diabetic sores. I've got before and after pictures of diabetic sores that would not heal with prescription medication. They healed in days just using the Herbal Mender. Hemorrhoids, burns, sunburn. The most difficult thing with burns is the pain, potential for infection, and the potential for scarring. And we've seen over and over people that use this Herbal Mender, which formula for which came from God through the Holy Spirit. And the Herbal Mender is effective in all three of those areas. Pain goes away by a factor of about 95% on the average within 10 minutes after application. I've got before and after pictures of that too. Frostbite, dry, cracked hands and feet, chapped lips, psoriasis, cold sores, and fever blisters. Those are caused by the herpes simplex virus. 50% of us are genetically immune from birth. The other 50% get these things from time to time, and they can be a plague for those of you who have had them, and you know. People tell me, I've never had one because I'm genetically immune, but people tell me they put on the Herbal Mender one time, and that's the end of it. It just goes away, and that's it till they get an outbreak later on. But now we have something that shows promise of even helping on that as far as working on the entire thing internally, systemically. Okay, continuing, Herbal Mender. Abrasions, cuts, bruises, chickenpox. Chickenpox is caused by a virus. And as you know, if you've had children that experienced this, if you experienced yourself before you were old enough to remember what this was like, I'll give you a typical example. A mother had me come into her home, and I brought the Herbal Mender to her. She showed me the back of her 6-year-old daughter that had so many chickenpox on her back that they were uncountable. There were hundreds. She used the Herbal Mender. Those chickenpox healed up without ever opening. There was no scarring, and the itching and discomfort went away upon application, basically, of the Herbal Mender. So, now, interesting thing. When I was in management of the health department of Salt Lake City, prior to the 2002 Olympics, I received training from the top scientists in the nation on biological agents and biological warfare. And these were the military doctors from Fort Detrick, Maryland, who are the gurus of this area. They're the ones that train the military doctors in case our troops are exposed so they know what to do. And they talked about smallpox, and they indicated that their information, basically that they got from a Russian scientist that defected to our country, is that Russia has lots and lots of smallpox and lots of anthrax spores. Those are the two biological weapons they have in large quantities. At any rate, smallpox. If you get sores beginning at the center of your body, back, belly, toward the center, that look like chicken pox, they're probably chicken pox. But if you get them see them come at the extremities of your body, hands and feet, lower legs, lower arms, that's the way smallpox starts, as opposed to chicken pox that starts at toward the center of the body. Smallpox is extremely infective, but it is not infective until the pox open on the 11th day. So if you can get those pox to heal up without ever opening, number one, you're not going to infect anyone else, and number two, you're on your way to overcoming the smallpox yourself. So think about that. Chicken pox is a virus, smallpox is a virus. They both are pox. Okay, well, let's go on to the most important thing of all that I would like to share with you today. And that is a Native American tea that I was led to through prayer. I'd had two close family members die of cancer. One was 21, one was 35. They both died of the treatment for cancer before they ever would have died of the disease. I began to pray. I had been given from God wonderful things for topical, but I had nothing for systemic problems like cancer. In less than 2 weeks, I was led to a Native American who was sent home from the hospital to die because he had cancer spread so far through his body they weren't even going to treat him. They told him he might live 2 weeks. He went to his tribal medicine man and said, I'm a young man, I have 4 small children, I really don't want to go yet. Isn't there something I can do? So he was told yes. He was shown a botanical, and he was told to gather it, make a tea out of it, and drink it. So he did. And in a few days, he stopped bleeding from the intestines. He continued to take the tea. The massive tumors that had grown on his neck began to shrink, continued to take the tea, and finally they sloughed off entirely. When I met him, it was several years later, and he was symptom-free of cancer. And at that moment, by the Spirit, I knew this was the answer to my prayer. But being a scientist, I couldn't let it go at that. I had to figure out why and how does this happen. And so I looked at people's live blood under the high-powered dark field microscope before they drank the tea and after they drank the tea for several months. And what I saw was that in every case, there was a large increase in healthy, strong, vibrant neutrophils. Now, when you're looking at live blood, you're not just counting neutrophils in the blood sample, but you can see them surge and move, and they're constantly changing shape. And if they're strong and healthy, they'll be surging on the inside. And the inside of those neutrophils, as they move and surge, look like many, many sparkling diamonds or emeralds or just beautiful gems reflecting the light. They are gorgeous to behold. And these neutrophils are a blessing from God because they've been given intelligence as to how to heal a body. They identify friend or foe in the bloodstream when a bacteria comes through the bloodstream or other pathogen or whatever. And if it's something that is not good for the body, then they take action against it. I won't go into the details of taking to a B cell or a T cell at this point because we're short of time. But when they're present in large numbers, these guys not only act as supervisors like they do normally, but they will stream in a large army to whatever area of the body is affected and needs to be healed. For example, first time that I included this in my lectures as I traveled, which was several months after I'd started to study, a man came up out of the audience and said, I'm deaf in one ear. I have a massive tumor in my brain. It's killed the auditory nerve to that ear, and so I'm deaf. The doctors tell me it'll soon take my life if I don't have this surgery to take it out. And I told him, by all means, have the surgery, but I suggest you take this home with you and start drinking it. And so he did. 4 weeks later, the exact day, I saw him in the audience, and I was thrilled because I realized he was still alive after the surgery. He came up afterwards, and he said, I got to tell you what happened. He said, the surgeon came in to talk to me after the surgery and said, you know, we had your surgery scheduled for several hours. It's a very tedious process to try to go in and cut the roots of the tumor out of the brain. He said, I went to do that with you, and I saw something I had never seen before. The roots of the tumor that had been growing into the brain were dead. The area of the tumor that the roots had been growing out of was dead, and an abscission layer had formed to separate the tumor from the brain. I was able to just slip the tumor out, what was left of it, in one piece, and sew you back up. He said, I don't understand it. I've done hundreds of surgeries. I have never seen anything like this. But as he described this to me, I understood it perfectly. Because the neutrophils have knowledge and intelligence. And had I had the time right now, I would tell instance after instance how the neutrophils will go to where they are needed the most first in the body. And they'll take out cancers and infections. And if the body has no infections, but it has damage to it, like the man in congestive heart failure that was dying with a heart efficiency rating of 34 after 7 months taking the tea, the heart specialist couldn't hardly believe the results he got back from the second heart efficiency test. The man had gone from a 34, which is dying, to a 74, which is optimum. And he said he'd never seen anything like that before. He'd never seen even half of the improvement. So needless to say, chronic pain, these are the things that people have reported back that they have had tremendous results from after drinking the tea. Chronic pain syndrome, chronic fatigue syndrome, fibromyalgia, diabetes, arthritis pain, cancer. We have 2 people now that have completely overcome MS, and the only thing they've done is drink the tea. High blood pressure, internal infections of viruses, bacteria, candida, or any other pathogen. I won't keep you longer on this other than I want to take this opportunity to bear testimony that Jesus Christ is the Son of the living God. And I would have none of this were it not for Him. I'm not some brilliant scientist, but I love the Lord and He guides me. God bless you all. I love you.